Okay. We are, or we should be live. Please tell me that we are live. Yes. Okay, cool. All right. Alrighty then. Let's do this. Welcome, everyone, to the official Chancellorsville Debrief. I'm your host, Carter McNish, and we are broadcasting to you live from the old Capitol Prison here in Washington, D.C. And joining us, we have a number of the players who actually participated in the game. Players, feel free after I'm done explaining, like I'll announce, like, and now's the time to speak up, after I explain kind of a report phase. And you guys can chime in with what you thought about what was happening and, what you see and what you didn't expect. And so this will be a very open forum, right? And so I won't run through 2 hours of your time and then have you all start like, oh, let's revert back to 0400 when I said this. Like, no, we're just going to do it after every phase. Everybody will be able to chime in if they want to. So we're looking at 0400 here on April 28th, 1863, the day where I decided the Chancellorsville Campaign would start. And so you can see we've got the Union and Confederate armies deployed on opposite sides of the Rappahannock River of Fredericksburg. And so pretty much we've got there's so much going on here, but I'll try and explain it as best I can. We've got 3 Union battle formations, or grand divisions, as they like to call them, lined up here. We've got Grand Division, what is this? Is this Grand Division C here with 3rd and 12th? Is that right, Tack?
That's correct. 3rd and 12th is C.
Then 6th and 11th
is B.
And then A is 1st and 5th down here. And I didn't circle all of 5th. But 1st and 5th Corps is Grand Division A. And then we've got the Army Reserve, which isn't really a reserve, of 2nd Corps. That's our 3 main battle formations of the Union Army. We've got then the Confederate Army. We've got Jackson's Corps deployed in a secondary position here, and Longstreet's Corps deployed in the primary position guarding the Fredericksburg line. So Jackson, Longstreet, and of course Lee's headquarters. Was it right here to start off with? Yes, I think it was. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. And the Union plan is pretty simple. Tack, do you want to kind of explain it in bullet point versions here?
All right. So Grand Division A, which also had the entire Army artillery park assigned to it. I had a number of extra batteries of artillery, including heavy guns, and they were stationed all along the heights. They were the holding force, you could call them the anvil, in this plan, and their job was to convince the Confederates that we were at Fredericksburg and we were planning on making another assault across at Fredericksburg. Grand Divisions B and C were going to march all the way around to Ely's Ford and Culpeper Mine Ford out in the middle of literally nowhere in the wilderness and cross. That was day one's operation, was basically that for B and C Grand Division. The Army Reserve, which then turned into the Army's Diversionary Corps, or the Army's Insane Corps, was to march and throw a pontoon bridge, so the entire river is impassable. I have to use pontoon bridges. There's no fords that I can use. They were going to throw a pontoon bridge across at our Shelton and form a defensive line around the Dawson area around to about Bailey. The purpose of that was they were to probe out, make contact with the Confederates, and draw the Confederates in to attacking them. and they were to be throwing up breastworks and defenses, and they had engineers attached to them for the purpose of throwing up breastworks faster. And I actually wanted to fight a defensive battle there and wear down the Confederate army by making them try to push me off of the crossing that they knew I would have to do. And while they're doing that, they're not paying attention to the wilderness where 4 entire corps are making their way across the river. The cavalry is not depicted here. The cavalry engagement was much further to the west, and my orders to my cavalry were that we had more cavalry than the Confederates did, and I didn't care how much damage the troopers took. I wanted them to render Jeb Stuart to be no longer a factor in any of this operation. So my cavalry orders were to locate, close with, and destroy the Confederate cavalry and render them completely incapable of further combat operations, no matter how much damage you take in the process. And Carter, that's pretty much day 1, unless you want me to briefly go into the sweep for day 2 that was planned and
didn't realize
happened.
Didn't realize that I was muted. Yeah, so that's pretty much the Union plan. And then the Confederate plan, well, we've got a defensive position. Let's see what the Union does and react accordingly. I mean, is that a fair summary, Marshall?
Yeah, I wanted each of these crossings to be monitored. And at first sign of a pontoon, we would send troops. Actually, at first sign of activity, we would send troops.
Actually,
I believe
if I delete the lines, you did have forces monitoring Culpeper Mine Ford here. You had a cavalry squadron. You had a cavalry squadron up at Germanna Ford.
Right.
And you also had a cavalry squadron at United States Ford and one overlooking the river here.
Yeah, and the idea was we would actually see them as they move along that trail.
That I actually deleted when I deleted all the lines.
That's okay. And then I believe here around Chancellorsville, we were to concentrate one of the corps within the ability to send reinforcements whatever way was necessary to deal with and throw back any attack, or at least slow it down until we could bring forces over.
Yeah.
I did not expect that they would cross over here, so I consistently or steadily stripped this line, sending more and more forces this way throughout the first day as they were needed.
Prove you wrong, but
well, that's okay. I mean, my orders were to send stuff that way.
Yeah.
And then the idea was at one point was I wanted this line to look so thin. I even ordered troops to pull back into these woods, the ones that were stationed there, because I wanted to bait him across. And then, of course, we could then roll up and destroy him in this open ground. That ended up not happening. So as the day wore on, we started to run into Union troops already across the river. We found, they're here, or wherever they're here. I know there was a big fight over here, and so on. So there were a number of fights, and as I kept getting reports back, it sounded like we were losing on all fronts. My cavalry evaporated. My cavalry went out and did cavalry things, and they straight disappeared.
Marshall, we'll cover this. Don't you worry. We'll see all those stuff happening. Yeah, but your initial plan is basically. I guess my big question is, right? If you wanted to concentrate a corps around Chancellorsville, why didn't you start sending it initially? Right? You wanted to put a corps around Chancellorsville, but the orders for that corps to move didn't come until much later in the day.
We probably I don't remember, Carter. Okay, I honestly don't. So
all right, it's fine. Let's move on to what is the next turn here? Is that going to be? It's been so long. I think we did units of even 2 hours. 0400, no, 0500. So an hour later, you can see the Union are going to be moving out of their camps. And we got one Confederate division, Rhodes Division, moving west. So Rhodes is moving out to a defensive position. It's going to kind of be like that. And that's going to be the western anchor of the Confederate Army. And you can see the Union, both Grand Divisions forming up onto the road. And we have our first traffic jam. Luckily, Joseph Hooker decided he was going to be up here. And so Rufus Ingalls, the quartermaster, is going to lead the march with the engineers and pontoons. And so Hooker was there to resolve that. And as you can see, they're just lining up on the roads and moving out. Same thing with 2nd Corps. They're getting ready to do that themselves. And Grand Division A working their way into, doing some small adjustments here and there on the riverfront. Nothing too major. Let's go to 0600. Okay. Chancellorsville 0600. Here we go. And I'm going to show you this map up until 0800. And it's pretty calm. It's nothing too much is going on. So 0600, and you can see we've gotten some notes here. We've got a courier from Stoneman to Hooker. I wonder what he's got to say. That's going to start appearing at 0730. And then some Stewart to Lee couriers that we're going to start moving later on. So I wonder what's going on over there with the cavalry. We wonder. The world wonders. But so the Union decided to do a force march here. And so that's why you can see them starting to get disrupted. Basically, we were going to have them, if they did a regular march with the 10-minute breaks per hour, they were going to move at 3 grids per hour, or 3 grids per turn instead of 4. But they've elected to do the full forced march without any breaks, so they're starting to take some disruption. That won't factor in too much into the overall result, because before they cross the river, they'll actually get time to rest while the pontoon bridges are being built. But yeah, so that's something that we were factoring in. It's troop exhaustion from long marches and stuff like that. So corps are still shuffling out. Nothing too much going on the river. Actually, the oh yeah, I forgot. First Corps, 1st Division, ordered all of their troops up onto the riverbank as kind of a showing of force. I'm not sure how well that worked. The Confederates couldn't really see it because it was still kind of dark. And so, you see a bunch of guys standing along the river. Okay. I think, Marshall, your reaction was like, okay, if they're just standing there and not assembling pontoon bridges, and they're not a threat, so we don't care. So that was interesting.
Carter.
Yes.
Real quick, because Marshall had mentioned his cavalry picket there.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we avoided that was I specifically knew I did not want to touch anything that was along the river until I absolutely had to.
Mm-hmm.
So I had actually ordered 2nd Corps to march. I really ordered them to march further to the north, but they still wound up marching on one of the side roads that was not on the river. And that's how they were able to dodge that cavalry picket.
Yeah.
Without even knowing it was there.
And so, and though I will say that right about now is when this cavalry trooper and this cavalry trooper over at U.S. Ford started sending reports, maybe later, but they are in the early morning hours going to send reports of massive dust clouds being kicked up in the distance. And I think even at one point, a messenger sent to Lee said, massive dust clouds, direction from east to west, right? And so kind of cryptic hints at what might be going on. But yeah, not perhaps actionable intelligence, but perhaps not, Here, goodness, what is initial report? Oh, yes. Oh, also these, initial report of cannon fire to the west. I wonder what that's all about. Second report of cannon fire, much larger volume, and so they're going to start moving soon enough as well. So that's we'll see what those were caused by. So those also, so there were hints of stuff going on that trickled in over the course of the day. But I think part of the problem with the play-by-post is that you get one report of dust clouds in March, and then in April, you get another report of dust clouds, and you're like, huh, that's interesting. And you never like put the two together because you don't remember the one that happened, weeks before. So that's part of it, I think. But so there were hints trickling in. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on. You can see Rhodes forming as defensive line. He's going to dig in some positions that the Union would only discover on day 2 as they were marching through. So some interesting stuff going on. Let's go to 0700 or 0800. I'm not sure. Did we skip 2 hours this time, or 0500, 0600, 0800? Yeah. So at this point, after I show you this, I will open it up for any comment if there is any. And so you can see at 0800, the head of the Union column is nearly at Culpeper Mine Ford. It's only about a 4-hour march to get from Fredericksburg to Culpeper Mine Ford. But you've got this massive column, so as Ingalls is arriving at Culpeper Mine Ford, we go all the way back here, and we've still got 3rd Corps just sitting on the road. So that's the thing about sending your entire army down one road, is that, holy cow, right? It's just going to take... The thing that makes this an all-day maneuver is not the march time. It's not the march time. It's how many people need to get there, right? So, or at least that's what we thought would make it an all-day maneuver. But anyway, that's pretty much what's going on. You can see first... I forgot about this. I don't know if Johansson's here listening to this, but he was the commander of 1st Division, 1st Corps, and he actually ordered his troops to march in loops. So his men were formed up along the river, and he asked us, do the Confederates seem to be shuffling about on top of the heights? And we said no, because they weren't. And so he said, I've got to make a better distraction than this. So he started his column marching down the river, out to the railroad, down the railroad back around, and then around back through Falmouth, and then down the river, and he's taking this loop and trying to kick up as much dust as he can to give the impression that a bunch of Union troops are moving from further inland toward the river. I don't think the Confederates fell for the bluff, but I remember Liam and I laughing about that. We'd almost be finished up moving this massive marching column, and then we'd realize, oh, wait, we've got to do the roundabout, and then start running these guys around. And yes, we actually did loop these guys around, even though you're only seeing 0600 to 0800, we would do all the moves because we were that freaking fanatical about about making everything move at that early stage. So that was kind of funny. At this point, is there any comment that would like to be made, or just observations or anything like that by the players? Cricket. Oh,
I'm one of 2nd Corps division commanders, and I was just plodding along that road there, and nothing really of note came about. I actually started the march early, and I got told by my Corps commander to actually stop because I was ahead of schedule.
Right. Yeah, this was you moving out, and then Couch, I think this is actually when Couch arrived, Sam Miller, and had to tell you to stop. No, stop! 9, that's not allowed.
Wow, Sam Miller telling someone to stop? That's unheard of.
Well, he had Tack breathing down his neck, telling him not to move. So...
My whole idea was to get there before dawn's first light so no one could actually see me.
Mm-hmm. And the rockets' red glare and the bombs burst.
So, as you can see here, you had Buford's brigade, which is the only cavalry brigade I pulled out of our cavalry corps that was literally the cavalry for the rest of the army.
Yeah.
And I had them with me because there seemed to be this propensity for commanding generals running into firefights and getting shot in some of our battles. I don't know how that happens. I think we're too aggressive sometimes. So I said, well, I will just have a cavalry brigade trot along with me. So if I run into a firefight, I can just let them do the shooting. And this after Carter and another play-by-post, Carter and Amelia ended up in a commander token versus commander token firefight,
Yes.
which I did roll. I said, yes, I want to not have that problem, because Carter will definitely do that to me if it happens. So I put Buford's cavalry here, and I had really leaned on Sam very hard that you are not to move out until I get back to you. And I have elite cavalry here to make sure that I know if you start doing something.
We never called him this, but basically Buford became the NKVD of the Army of the Potomac. The military police. So, yeah, that was kind of funny.
Instead of never retreat, it's never advance.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the players in this game, because it was a lot of marching, got a very accurate to life war experience. War is long periods of absolute boredom, permeated by brief, just moments of sheer terror and chaos. And so, marching, bang, whoa, there's a firefight, and then like 30 minutes later, both sides have disengaged, and you're like, oh my gosh, right? It was a lot of that, right? So speaking of long periods of boredom and then sheer moments of terror, let's back up a few minutes, and let's go to the cavalry map. Because both sides elected to have their cavalry. They were informed that way upstream, there were actually bridges and fords that you could get across without setting up pontoons. So both sides' cavalry, in order to try and get across without having to wait for the pontoons, tried to go way west and flank around. Stuart was going to try and raid the Union supply lines. The Union Cavalry Corps was going to try and get, around to screen the main advance. And they happened to get into a little bit of a tussle. So here's 0400 on the cavalry map. So you can see here, the Union Cavalry Corps has assembled at Brandy Station. We've got 2 divisions of the Cavalry Corps. Technically, the Cavalry Corps had 3 divisions. In fact, a lot of the Corps had 3 divisions. I just consolidated them because we were already at like 40 players with 2 divisions per Corps. So I didn't want to make it 60 players. Of course, this was back, in the long days past when I wasn't worried about putting 90 players, or when I was worried about putting 90 players in a Kriegspiel. But, so 2 divisions, and 1 is actually under the direct command of the Corps commander. So we've got Dave Pumphouse as General Stoneman in charge of the Cavalry Corps, and Jan Heinemann as William Averill in charge of the 2nd Division of the Cavalry Corps. And we got 3 brigades each and some horse artillery. 2 batteries in 2nd Division, 3 batteries in 1st. So they're there at Brandy Station. And then we look down here at Rapidan Station, and we've got the Confederate Cavalry Corps. Now we've got 1 brigade of this Cavalry Corps detached. It's with Lee's army. It's those blocks guarding or watching, not really a guard, but a watchdog for those fords. And so we've got 3 cavalry brigades and 5 batteries of horse artillery. So outnumbered 2-1 in terms of troopers, but the same amount of artillery. And Stuart's plan, right, is to get around the Union line. He wants to go something like this. He wants to go over here, up the Rapidan, over, and then wham! Basically get behind the Union line. And then he wants to go over here. And I'll show you, this is our crossover episode. Do you recognize any of these names? Eli's Ford, Culpeper Mine Ford, U.S. Ford, right? So this is on the other map. This is on the main map here. And so he wants to get behind and attack the Union columns. Of course, he wouldn't actually know that there would be Union columns there, but he wants to attack the Union supply chain and the rear areas. And so if he had gotten through, this would have been a very different game. But as it happened, the Union battle plan went something a little bit like this. 1 division is going to, actually Dave Pumphouse's division, the main 1st division, is going to march down here to Stevensburg. and they want to go down to check out this ford here, Morton's Ford. They want to see whether or not they can cross there. Psst, psst, they can't. And then the 2nd Division is going to go over here, down towards Culpeper, and then down here this way, towards Mitchell Station, and then eventually Rapidan Station. And if they can't cross at Morton's Ford, then they're to move down to Rapidan Station. Do you see the problem here? Do you see what's about to happen? We have a collision course, ladies and gentlemen, so let's fast forward to 0500, I believe.
Would it have been possible for Stuart to outmaneuver this at all, given their start location?
Yeah, I mean, so he almost got through. Like, this battle, you'll see, it was a winding, wily chase. It was crazy. Of course, the surest way, like, basically, he was cutting across here, thinking that the Union would just follow the railroad, which is the most logical path, right? It's the most linear path, right? That's the obvious route to take. And so he was hoping
not
to
logical.
yeah. And so he was hoping to kind of cut under them and, do something unexpected, which it was unexpected, but ended up just basically, I'll say this, Stuart just got insanely unlucky. It was just sheer coincidence that they happened to run into each other this way. It was just like, Liam and I were laughing about it when we saw the initial orders. We were like, oh my God. How, like, on such a massive map, this happens, or this is going to happen. And so let's go to 0500 and see what happens. Cavalry module 500. There we go. Okay. So Stuart moving down the road. And he is actually marching his forces at the double quick. He wants to just get the hell out of Dodge, right? So he's actually taking disruptions, right? No, he's not. He's not at the double quick. He's force marching it. So with the cavalry. So the horses are getting a little bit winded, right? And all that. Supply can't exactly keep up, so it's getting left behind. Stuart is just making a dash down this road. Meanwhile, Union Cavalry Corps, Stoneman's division is just approaching Stevensburg. So we can see, if I'll just highlight it here, that's where Stuart is. That's where Stoneman is. So he is going to get to Morton's Ford before Stuart does. He's got a shorter distance to travel. So with that said and done, let's move to 0530 was the next one? 0500. Nope. 0600. Here we go. Here's where it starts getting interesting. So, the column arrives at Morton's Ford. They see that it's just, nope, we can't cross there. At this point, Stuart had ordered the lead element of his column at the double quick. And so now, instead of... So here's where it starts getting really crazy, okay? So we've got the Union over here, right? This is the Union column. And Stuart has ordered part of his line at the double quick to go this way. So all of a sudden, now they're not on a collision course. Meanwhile, the rest of his column is back here, going up here. So that's interesting. Meanwhile, we've got a second Union column, the other division, over here. So this is going to get crazy fast, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be this is probably the best cavalry fight the IKS has ever had, and nobody's heard about it until today. So 0630. And here is where we have first contact, I believe. Yes. So Stuart has decided, I believe he saw dust clouds or something over to his east, and he's like, I don't like that. And so he decided to deploy his division into a kind of battle line to see what was actually going on. And this is when Stoneman and the Confederate cavalry first see each other. Stuart has actually stayed over here to look out because he thinks the Union cavalry is going to come this way. So he doesn't see it, but his men do, and so does Stoneman. So this is going to develop into a very interesting little cavalry fight. Let's go to the next reporting phase. And we were actually running this on kind of an ASAP schedule because, we only had like 3 reports east, whereas we're going to have a bunch of reports here. So 0600, 0630, 0645, 15 minutes later. What's going on? Battle started. Stuart realizes that there's cavalry down here, so he's going to try and bug out. His horse artillery opens fire and forces or convinces the Union cavalry to retreat behind this hill into the little valley here created by this creek. And so Stoneman's going to regroup his brigade here and send the rest of his division northwest to try and intercept the Confederate cavalry. Meanwhile, Stuart realizes he's got to get out of here, so he's now sending his cavalry through here behind this wood line to try and stay out of sight of the Union cavalry. And it's now where he's seeing the Union cavalry penetrating through these woods here, and he's starting to realize just how much trouble he's about to be in. Meanwhile, Averill's division is right here. They've got their orders to march down to Mitchell Station, right? And so now they're hearing artillery fire to their southeast. That's weird, Jan thinks, but he just keeps on going. Stuart sets up one of his brigades as a pick here at this crossroads to try and, watch his back as the supplies keep moving up. And so let's move on to 0700 here and see what happens. Okay. 0630, 0700. There we go. All right. So, back down here. Let's see what's going on. So, 2 Union cavalry brigades sweeping across this open field here. Averill and Dave Pumphouse are sending, or Jan and Dave Pumphouse are sending messages to each other that are going all the way around. And now we've actually, at this point, you might think, these guys surely know that there's Confederates there. Well, the Confederates bugged out of here just before these guys would have come into view of them. So Jan, even though there are Confederate cavalrymen less than a mile from his position, because he is on a road surrounded by woods, has no idea that they're there. And so now we've got Stuart marching through or riding through the middle, and now he's evacuating his artillery. And Dave is still behind the hill, so he can't see that the cavalry has evacuated the horse artillery. And so now we're going to start. But you can see this brigade is going to run through these trees and catch the end of this column. So let's see what's going to happen when that happens. So we're going to go to 0715 now. 0715. All right. So the battle has begun, and just because of the very unlucky way that brigade rode through, they managed to get themselves almost enveloped. And so a couple of units are breaking. Some of the troopers have gone over here and started attacking the other brigade that's coming up. These guys are now running north to try and escape. The artillery is trying to escape itself, and Jan has completely missed the action. We've been giving him hints. He's heard artillery fire. He actually saw horse droppings on the ground as he was riding through, and he still doesn't know. Meanwhile, now Dave sends his artillery up to try and counter battery when they spot nothing. And so he's like, oh, that's weird. And now he's hearing gunshots and all sorts of neighing and all that kind of stuff going up north. And so this battle is about to get really hectic, ladies and gentlemen, and this entire cavalry division, which is in a perfect position to just turn east and crush him, is, oh my gosh, they don't even know. They don't even know. All right, so 0730. Let's go see what's happening there. 0730. Okay. Here we are. And it is a catastrophe, ladies and gentlemen. It is just crazy. So you can see that this cavalry fight is just winding and circling and reeling. Everybody's going in. Some of these troopers tried to charge the artillery guns who were in column, which deployed and shot canister into them before they managed to... Oh my gosh. And so these cavalry brigades of Stoneman's are just getting torn up. But the Confederates, they're not taking it too well either. He's sending Jenkins' brigade around the top to see if there's any more that he can flank and encircle. Stoneman is moving his other brigade and his artillery up to try and get around behind. Jan has sent... Actually, Jan has continued down, but this brigade, hearing artillery fire, was like, hold up, wait a minute, and is now riding through the woods to investigate, and has sent a message back down to Jan to try and tell him, hey, dude, there's a battle going on behind you. So it's
How
getting
did God
crazy.
not hear any of this?
Well, he did. He heard the artillery fire. And he heard the musket fire and all that stuff. Well, at least we told him about it. Maybe he didn't see the report, but we were telling him and all that kind of stuff. And so let's go to 0745 here. Or we were already on 0745, right? Or that's an easy way I can check this. Nope, that's 0730. Okay. All right. 0745. Let's see what's going on at that time. So it's just catastrophe here for the 1st Cavalry Division. Stoneman's brigades, a bunch of these troopers are getting captured, surrounded by the Confederate cavalrymen. And basically Stuart has managed to just slaughter these 2 brigades of cavalrymen. But then Jan's brigade comes in and charges the guns. And so now these guns are being broken. These guns are almost dead. And so, it's not going well. Meanwhile, Jan's other troopers are charging these guns. So Jan is basically with 1 brigade eliminated the artillery from the battle. And now is when Dave Pumphouse and Jan, by sheer accident, now happen to be with each other. Jan finally turned around, and Dave is now here looking at this. And so it is just a crazy fight at the moment. Dave's got his artillery back here to support. Let's move on to the next reporting phase, 0800. Come on. 600, 630, 740, 800. Here we go. And so it's not looking good for the Union, but it's also the Confederates aren't looking too good either. And so now the fight is between the basically forces of roughly equal size now. But, of course, the Confederate troopers are now, pretty well weakened. And so they're going in, trying desperately to save their artillery. The Confederate artillery is captured. And because they have to shift so quickly to take care of the new Union forces coming in, all of these forces are left to their own devices. So they aren't surrendered anymore. They run away. And so now they're running back towards where they thought the Union cavalry is, down by the Harris farm, but it isn't there anymore. And so it's just crazy. And so you can see Dave's cavalry moving through here, Jan's cavalry capturing the artillery, more of Jan's cavalry moving around, Confederate cavalry troopers coming to try and save these 2 batteries of artillery. Remember, these guys got captured, so they're trying to save them. And it's just this wheeling, circling, reeling, bubbling, boiling cauldron of death. It's just, oh my gosh, it's crazy. And so we're going to go to now, I think, 0800 there, 0900. And Liam and I were like, okay, we're done. We've got to finish this. And so we just ran 4 turns consecutively to just figure out what the heck happened. And so at the end of that, the Confederate troopers managed to break contact. Their artillery was captured or destroyed for the most part. Yeah, you can see 2 batteries of artillery captured here. A bunch of Union cavalry troopers routed or broken from the field with a bunch of hits. The Union Cavalry Corps is just entirely beat up. There was 1 brigade that never got actually engaged. They were sent to make sure that nothing else new came from here, because in the middle of the battle, Stuart sent a fake dispatch towards Rapidan Station to a fake infantry division commander telling him that there's cavalry he's engaged with. And the Union intercepted that message and deployed that cavalry there as a screen against an imaginary division that never existed. And so now you can see that both cavalry corps are basically combat ineffective. And so with the Union's orders to take out Stuart isn't yet taken out. And so 1 brigade of the cavalry corps plus 1 battery of artillery is going to carry on the mission to go and screen the army. Meanwhile, the rest of the cavalry corps is going to chase Stuart into the hills of West Virginia and all that kind of stuff. And Liam and I were both kind of done with the cavalry at this point. We'd had our fill. And so we said, we're going to let that action be resolved in the history books, not by ourselves. And so we decided that basically the cavalry corps had punched each other in the face, and we're now going and continuing that fight, that mosh pit, just off, off somewhere else. We didn't want to roll for it. And so that's pretty much the end of the cavalry fight.
Who was the Confederate cavalry commander?
A guy named B-Dubs.
Okay.
So he he didn't get his cavalry corps destroyed, but it was bad. And he did more damage to the Union than he actually took himself. So he was fighting a force twice his number, but because of the way that he actually managed to encounter it, basically was almost able to defeat them in detail, and only managed to get overwhelmed at the end just because Jan showed up just in time to have his fresh troopers facing B-Dubs, not fresh troopers. So, a very interesting cavalry fight. And at this point, Jan diverted to command of the 1st Corps because Tsarina had to leave for, I forget what was the reason, but he had some real life stuff going on or whatnot, and so he was too busy to actually command 1st Corps. And so Jan, now conveniently freed up to do other things, commanded that, and Dave Pumphouse took a demotion down to Colonel from Major General and became the commander, Colonel Sergeant, of Sergeant's Brigade. And so they're basically going to spend the rest of that day moving down towards trying to get over here. And so that's what they'll do. To Eli's Ford and whatnot to screen the main army. So that's the cavalry fight, and I just want to get your I just want to get y'all's takes on that. Like, what do you think of that massive cavalry fight? Just crazy.
My biggest question still stands: why did Jan ignore all signs of battle going on?
I wish Jan was here to explain. We did a separate debrief for just the cavalry players, and I think he thought what he was hearing was much farther away than it actually was, and maybe that was just my bad, the reports being vague. I'm not sure, but he was getting reports of the reports got increasingly more blatant and obvious. Dude, there's a cavalry fight going on right next to you, which was basically to the point where when that brigade detached from the column and disobeyed orders and went to go try and find what was going on, that was kind of our final hint to him, like, dude, there's a fight, you got to get in there. And so, yeah,
man needs his hearing checked.
That's what we were joking. We were both simultaneously screaming, laughing, and cringing at this cavalry battle. It was just, oh my gosh, yeah. Dave, do you have anything to say as the Union Corps commander here?
Well, yeah, I mean, our basic orders were to, as you say, find the way across the ford, but we were told if you bump into any Confederate cavalry, demolish them. And we took that to heart, and we more or less succeeded and took them out of the game. So that was a victory for me. And then, like you say, I bumped myself down to Colonel because the end of our orders were to make it to Wilderness Tavern. So I was like, nope, someone's got to be there. Someone's got to meet the infantry, even if it's just a brigade.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, my goodness, it was we called that the Battle of Summer Duck Run. In fact, there were actually a few blocks that just got actually just fully taken out. These are all the blocks that sustained 2 hits and ended up being complete losses. And so if we imagine, I believe it was 250 troopers per block. So let's just calculate the casualties here. I want to do this because I think my original number was off. So 250 times, I'll do the Confederate losses here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus, all right. Then how many hits do we have? Well, I will count the artillery separate. Okay. then each hit is going to be about 125 guys. So 125 times 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that's artillery. Yeah, my goodness. So times 4. That's 1,750 troopers gone for the Confederates. And then the Union, we've got... Oh, wait. Plus, that's 2,000 Confederate troopers dead or wounded or missing. And then 500... 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 1,000. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1,500. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2,000. Yeah, so about equal casualties on both sides, but the Union has a bunch of their guys routed and stuff like that. So, oh, and then I didn't even count. I think there were. No, they left the Union prisoners behind. They didn't want them. Yeah, so, and then the Union ended up losing... I don't think they lost any of their artillery. Yeah, they didn't. But the Confederates ended up losing about 12, 16, 18 guns. So, just a crazy battle. It was nuts. It was so much fun to umpire that. You don't even know. It was... Liam and I actually got into shouting matches over some of the stuff that we had to resolve. But, yeah, holy cow.
Yeah, it was certainly fun to play it at the time. Like, I was... Because, I mean, this was kind of like my first time as being a cavalry commander as well. So I had to kind of learn on the spot and kind of try and use what I thought to be best practice as well. And... yeah, and I guess luck was on our side that we kind of bumped into them the way we did. But no, it was a hell of a fight.
Yeah, it really was. And some hints of it were trickled through, but nobody really knew what happened to the cavalry for the rest of the battle, as Lee and Tack would kind of attest. Because, of course, the Union Cavalry Corps ended up getting behind the cavalry of the Confederates, and so cut off their communications with Lee. And so Lee basically got a cryptic dispatch of like, I'm getting attacked, oh my god, and then nothing. So, whereas Tack got a kind of after-action report from Dave, so that was kind of nice of him. But yeah.
Which, at this point, now that you're showing the 1000, I still wasn't apprised of an actual cavalry fight, and I wouldn't really know what happened until 2100 hours.
Yeah.
I'm still 11 hours from my briefing on the cavalry engagement we just saw.
Yeah. So crazy, right? The time delay on such a massive map, such a massive battle, these huge armies. And so you can see at 1000, forces are starting to assemble by the river. The original plan called for them to just camp out there for the rest of the day, though Sedgwick was not content to sit on his butt and wait. And so he decided later on to bridge the river later that same day, which ended up having some interesting consequences. But yeah, so that's pretty much what's going on. So you can see the column just keep on moving down. What? And so you can see, basically they actually staggered it. So 6th Corps was the first through after the engineers. And then after them, so Grand Division B, right? And then the 1st Corps of Grand Division C, so the 12th Corps. And then leapfrog after that, you've got the, you've got the 11th Corps. And then they're filing out, and they're still working their way from all the way back here. And then finally, at the back of the column, you've got 3rd Corps. So they're going to spend pretty much all day waiting.
One thing real quick, and to remind, from the cavalry fight we just saw, had Stuart been able to get through unmolested, he would have had an elite cavalry division, which cavalry in the Civil War is not that great and typically did not do epically amazing things like the winged hussars and things of that nature in other eras and other places. But when you look at how beat up just from the forced march these columns are, an elite cavalry division taking on the head of the column and just ramming down their throats would have probably rolled up an entire corps.
Yeah, probably. So, very good service rendered by the Union Cavalry Corps to prevent that from happening.
Well, if you think about it, like, even if it forces one division to deploy for battle, the entire march order is destroyed. It's just completely thrown out the window.
Yeah. So, it's one of the things that kind of sticks with me, after this battle is like, how different would it have been if neither cavalry corps ran into each other? Like, how different would this have been?
It could have happened. It could have happened because me and Jan, when we first started, we were like, okay, where do we want to go? And I was 50-50 whether just to kind of keep us together and go down the railroad or split up. And it was only really because of that, lesson learned in, everyone's minds, where it's just like, well, don't march all together down the same road. Try and split up your divisions if you can. We got lucky because, we could have just walked right past them.
Yeah, it could have been that easy.
It could have been about 1,100 hours. Dave is leading his cavalry into an undefended wilderness tavern at the same time that Sedgwick is in the fight of his life with exhausted soldiers, engineers, and worn-out gun crews trying to shove pontoons out of the way so that they can take on a cavalry corps that's literally riding down their throats, double-fisting pistols. Is what could have very well happened if the cavalry had not run into each other.
Yeah. The Union probably would have gotten a warning through to Fredericksburg from Rappahannock Station, because that's where they would have had some small, probably a telegraph operator or whatever there, see the cavalry run through, maybe even get attacked himself, and would have sent like a SOS, and then like line goes dead, and so there probably would have been some warning, but it would have gotten to Fredericksburg, where the railroad terminates, and then it would have had to travel by courier a number of hours over to Sedgwick. So it probably wouldn't have made a difference in the ambush on Sedgwick, So Hooker would be like, oh, shoot, the Confederate cavalry has gotten through. And Sedgwick is none the wiser. And if Hooker tries to send a message to the Union Cavalry Corps, they're not going to get it because their their lines of communication have been occupied by the Confederate cavalry. So it could have been really bad. It could have been very bad. But for the Union, they got lucky. And so it didn't happen that way. You can see that not much has changed over here. You can see, though, yes, the loop-de-loops continue with 1st Division, 1st Corps. And, yeah, nothing much else. Rhodes Division has deployed. It's digging trenches. That's why they're at White Disruption, because they've dropped their rifles, picked up shovels, and started digging.
The loop-de-loops make me happy. I sent orders. Part of the plan was for a Grand Division to do things in order to try to keep the Confederates occupied for day one, because I wanted Marshall to be as occupied as possible, staring across the river at Fredericksburg for as long as I could keep his attention. Mm-hmm. So I'm impressed that they really took that to heart and made every possible effort to make Marshall sit there in his trenches, stare across the river, and go, what the heck are these idiots doing?
Oh, yeah, and also the meeting of the minds at the Lacey farm, a place called Chatham Manor. I'll actually... C.T. Mack, or we should say General Henry Hunt, Brigadier General Henry Hunt, in charge of the Army Artillery Reserve, somehow managed to net himself the fanciest house in the area as his HQ. I will actually switch the view to Google Maps here and show you some pictures of the Chatham Manor. So just give me a moment here as I switch from where I am in Mississippi to the Chatham Manor here on... Okay, here we go. Yeah, okay, so let me go to Streamlabs, and then I need to switch the view to this. Yes, okay. All right, and transition. So that's what Chatham Manor looks like, and I won't switch the Discord. Well, actually, I can. Change windows. I want to change... Yeah, okay. All right, so that's what Chatham Manor looks like. So he has the meeting of the minds here at Chatham. Overlooking Fredericksburg, you can see. Is there a picture from the inside of the house? Is there? Come on. There's got to be. Somebody has to have. Maybe not. Some fun trivia about this place. It's actually where Robert E. Lee got married. So now he's got a Union command conference going on in the same place where he got married. So, so kind of interesting. It was actually Burnside's headquarters during the Battle of Fredericksburg. So some good history in there. So just some cool facts about that. Anyhow, so that's his headquarters. There's the meeting of the minds there. Some cool stuff. Let me transition the Discord stream as well. There it is. Okay. And now we're back to the tabletop. So, nothing too new. Let's carry on to the next report phase here. 1000. Why did I save it at 1015? I don't know. We'll just move to 1100. There's not much that's
still stuck on Google Maps and Discord.
Are you really? Oh my gosh. I told it to change windows. Tabletop Simulator. Go live. I'm just going to have to stop and restart the stream. I apologize. Okay. Now it should be the map again. Nothing much has changed. You can just see that more troops assembling by the fords, and now 12th Corps is starting to assemble by Eli's Ford. And 2nd Corps has begun its march. So they're moving out. A regiment of the Irish Brigade out in front, screening for Confederates on a river they know is uncrossable. But if 2nd Corps was attacked by the Confederate cavalry, they would not have been surprised. So, credit to them. Wouldn't have helped Sedgwick that much, though. Anyhow, loop-de-loops still going on. Still doing it. And Marshall and Nick are here at the National Cemetery, which didn't exist. That's kind of a spoiler alert. This map is from 1867, and the National Cemetery wasn't made until after the war. But they're here on Mari's Heights, overlooking the area, and all of these Union gunners are beginning to load their cannons. I'm not sure whether they... At 1200, all of these Union batteries are about to open up hellfire and brimstone upon the Confederates. What they don't realize, though, is that the Union guns have a maximum range of about 6 grids, KS grids, which is just over a mile. So they can reach the heights. Well, these guys can't, but these guys can reach the heights. But they can't... The Confederate trenches are at the very extent of their range. Except for these heavy artillery guns who can fire 8 grids, so they are actually within range, but, still extreme range for them. But while the main Confederate line isn't in range of the Union guns, Lee and Longstreet are. So we'll see how that turns out at 1200. Speaking of which, let's go to 1200. Okay, 1200, 28 April. Yep. And all hell breaks loose. I forget what exactly the report I gave CT was, but it's all this smoke is being kicked up by exploding shells. And Lee and Longstreet, we rolled for it. We rolled a d20, and we said on a 1 something would happen to Lee or Longstreet. And so we rolled, and Lee rolled a 1. So a cannonball exploded right next to him. Or, well, shell, not a cannonball. Cannonballs don't explode. Shells explode. And so he was actually knocked out, like incapacitated. And so he was rushed back by his staff to the Howard mansion here, the Howard Manor, to try and sleep off his concussion, basically. And so CT actually got a report that, he saw, Confederate command parties, and he had ordered his batteries to focus them if they could. And he saw shells start exploding all around them. And when the smoke started clearing, he didn't see them anymore, right? So he was like, oh my God, who did I kill, right? Well, he almost killed General Robert E. Lee. So that was interesting. But yeah, so this bombardment starts now, and it's going to last for an hour. In other news, everybody's starting to assemble at their designated fords. Engineers building pontoons. Hooker is there to oversee it himself. And they've ordered pontoons constructed here at Eli's Ford and here at Culpeper Mine Ford. And these guys have had enough time to rest that they are now somewhat combat ready. Meanwhile, the Confederate cavalry is trying to stay out of sight, and the Union actually never ends up really seeing them too much. Marching columns
Carter,
continue.
if I may.
Yes.
When I'm at this point, I think that the main column is somewhere about here. Is where I believe my main column is. Like, my timing has been set up for the purpose of my main column being there, so that they can move around, get in position, and actually cross on day 2.
Right. Yeah, so
clearly, I have
clearly,
no idea that they've exceeded their orders by about 18 hours.
Yep, just overachievers, right? Yeah. You had the module, so you could have measured it out.
Yell at them for being 18 hours ahead of schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. What other commander would say, no, stop, you're ahead of schedule? What other plan would call for that? If only Field Marshal Montgomery had his commanders in 30 Corps. 18 hours ahead of schedule. So that's pretty much what's going on. 3rd Corps has finally gotten on the road, so yay, 3rd Corps. Woo-hoo. They've been on the road. They've been waiting all day. So now we get to, what is it, 1000 now? 1200. Okay. What is the next report? 1300. Let's see what happens here. Ah, yes. So it's at this point where the Confederates have decided that, yeah, okay, the Union have definitely decided to cross, which they have. You can see A.P. Hill's division has decided to take the river road, which was a fateful decision for them. They were ordered to move to Chancellorsville, and they decided to do that by way of this road, which inadvertently put them straight in the path of 2nd Corps, which had completed their pontoons and was now crossing. And you can see that just the thing about these marching columns, right? The front of the column is deployed in battle line, seeing Confederates, and the back of the column is still on the other side of the river. So that's just some of the funny stuff.
Here we
that
go,
happens.
my time to shine.
Oh yeah. So A.P. Hill and Val Gould see each other, and Val Gould is able to identify A.P. Hill due to a historical reality, and that's because A.P. Hill always wore a red shirt when he was in battle. And so he sees a conspicuous command party with a guy in a red shirt opposite him. And so that is how he is triggered in the report to know that it's A.P. Hill. So now we've got AP Hill about to encounter 2nd Corps, and Rhodes at the head of the column, moving west towards Wilderness Tavern. What he doesn't know, of course, is that he's going to get beaten there by 6th Corps if he doesn't hurry. And 12th Corps, meanwhile, has crossed the river at Eli's Ford and is now preparing a defensive line and considering moving down towards Bullock's Run. So we'll see how this develops. Let's go to 1330. Where is that? 1330. Here it is. And here's our first contact on the main map. So, Valgul, ever aggressive, ordered his men forward to try and move through the woods to pressure the flanks. AP Hill deployed Archer's brigade to guard the artillery, and so they're engaged. McGowan's brigade is moving around the flank. He's bringing up more troops behind. So, meanwhile, Valgul has ordered his troops to start digging a trench line. He's got a brigade over here to guard this little area here. And now General Couch is up there at the front. And so, meanwhile, General Hooker is taking a reconnaissance in force towards the Bailey farm at the head of his column. So, definitely no danger there. And yeah, so that's basically how the fighting has started. Let's move on to...
If I may.
Yes.
It was at this point that I started to do a delaying action against them because I had my guys setting up trenches, and what they were doing was just gradually falling back while keeping in contact with them, just trying to hamper their advance.
Yeah, exactly. So, buying time for these guys to get some trenches together, which they will, but we'll see how that develops. Okay, so 1330 now. We need to move to 1345. And unintentionally, something that I will hope to rectify in future games, is that everybody knew that something was happening because the reporting phases slowed down, right? It wasn't 2 hours between reports. It was now 15 minutes. But nobody knew exactly what was going on or where. So that was kind of nice. So that was how that happened. And so Hooker now, and Couch, and Valgul are now having a meeting of the minds directly behind the front line. And so, meanwhile, AP Hill is marshaling his forces to try and put together an attack on this position, which he knows is now forming. Meanwhile, he's got more of his men moving around, so he's hopefully going to try and expand his line west and move this way. And we'll see how that develops. 2nd Division, under Arden Hood, is moving this way to shore up the line as the initial intent was, right? This kind of half moon here line around this peninsula, or this little neck in the river. And we'll see how that keeps going. So far, not much casualties, just kind of people shooting. So far, not much. Rhodes has elected to deploy his division at the Wilderness Church and move in battle order towards Wilderness Tavern, and that's going to slow him down significantly. 6th Corps has deployed a brigade as skirmishers to go flush these woods out and press towards Wilderness Tavern and see what's going on down there. 12th Corps is forming up a defensive line, just trying to guard their little ford. There's a bridgehead here. And, not too much is going on. Ingalls, after completing the bridges, is forming up his troops between... Basically, the Rappahannock River kind of goes around like this. And so he's forming his troops along the road to try and, make sure that the Confederates can't run through. Because I think this was when Hooker got reports of that major cavalry battle. And so now this is going to be their blocking force against the Confederate cavalry. Is that right, Tack?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep. I had probably about 30 minutes before this, I had sent... It was always in the plan to some degree to block, because that's the one place that you wouldn't need to either ride all the way to a bridge or bring your bridge with you. So that was the one place I knew if Confederate cavalry could run amok, they could just race between the rivers.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my idea for blocking spot.
Yeah.
Would have been way too late if the cavalry battle had gone differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so interesting stuff there. Not too much else to report. You can see Early's division is moving off of the line. So basically what has happened now is Jackson's corps is moving west and Longstreet's corps, fully half the army, is staying east. So clearly the diversion is keeping a significant portion of the Confederate army honest about being in those trenches. And you can see Marshall, he talked about earlier how his troops are moving off of the line. So he's done some of that. About half the troops have moved off of the line on Mary's Heights, and even here a little bit too. So some of that stuff is going on. Meanwhile, General Hood has pushed a brigade up to the river, reconnaissance in force, make sure that the Union aren't building any pontoon bridges here. They aren't, so that's all good and well. And the Union doesn't have any artillery, and they're out of musket range, so they're just sitting there. Just kind of interesting. And the artillery bombardment has, of course, stopped. All right, let's move on now to... What is this? So it's 1345 now? Is it? Yeah, 1345, so we need 1400. 1400. Is there no 1400? Nope. Yeah, 1400. Here we go.
And while this is loading up, Carter, one thing you haven't mentioned yet was that the Union engineers, because I had engineer support, were
Oh yes. Building a
they
telegraph.
were able to lay. They're building telegraph. So I am in the process of making an entire telegraph network for this battle.
Yep.
And trying to get things linked back to headquarters.
Yeah, you can see since 0400, this group of engineers has been laying line all the way to here. Back from here, keep going, follow these chess pieces down to the railroad. And then the railroad already had telegraph line, and then they built telegraph line from the railroad to 5th Corps' HQ at the Lee Farm. So a significant telegraph network already. 2nd Corps' engineers, after completing the bridges, have now begun building telegraph line, and they're going to build it up to Rappahannock, the Rappahannock crossing here, to meet up with the main line. And these telegraph lines are going to extend all the way to the fords, and then across them down to Wilderness Tavern. And then by the end of the game, you're going to see they've moved the telegraph line all the way east to Wilderness Church. So a significant telegraph line. And basically those telegraph lines, if a message takes 6 hours to send by horse, right, because it has to ride that way, the commander writes the dispatch, sends it to a telegraph station. It takes half an hour for that telegraph station to turn it into a dispatch. And then it moves instantly to the end of the line or to the receiving station closest to the recipient. And then it gets back on a horse and then rides the rest of the way. So it can speed it up by a number of hours, especially if you're sending it across the entire map. So it's not instant communication, but it's also going to speed up the Union message times. But not right now. It's not complete yet. So some interesting stuff there. Roads continuing to deploy. More stuff going on there. Colston deploying here around Chancellorsville. And the fight continues. A.P. Hill is kind of developing his position and is starting to get into a spot where Val Ghul is going to start retreating. Is that right?
I mean, the intention was to always retreat. By the way, my character's name in this scenario is Winfield Hancock, for anyone wondering.
Yeah. So that's about to start happening. And let's see what's going on. So it's 1400 now. Let's go to 1430. We don't have to see every single report state here. Oh gosh. 14, 15, 14, 30. And let's see how this situation has changed in 30 minutes. All right, there we have it. 1430. And so you can see Hill is trying to flank the position. Meanwhile, 2nd Division, 2nd Corps, kind of brain fart moment, didn't realize his orders were to dig in, and so is moving around to try and help, and they're about to run into each other accidentally as well. So they've completed breastworks, and so they're happy to sit behind those breastworks. And these guys are falling back, being pressed by McGowan's brigade and Heath's brigade, moving up here, which Liam constantly was calling Heth's brigade, but it's actually pronounced Heath. And he would actually command A.P. Hill's division once A.P. Hill became a corps commander for the Gettysburg campaign. But maybe not after this fight. We'll see. Union and Confederate artillery batteries exchanging fire. Confederate artillery batteries doing much better in the fight than the Union for whatever reason. They just more effective fire, I suppose. And let's fast forward here. I think 1415 is going to be an interesting one. Or no, sorry, 1445. So I'm going to do that. 1445. Let's see. How is the situation developing? Yep. As I figured. Yep. So, 2nd Division, 2nd Corps has now unintentionally found the flank of A.P. Hill's division, and is now rapidly trying to deploy into battle line to fix the situation. A.P. Hill is fighting, and both commanders really actually don't know what's going on. A.P. Hill is over here. Yeah. A.P. Hill's over here with McGowan's brigade, and so a full over a mile away, the other end of his division is fighting an entirely separate Union division. And what's interesting, right? A.P. Hill's division is the biggest in the Confederate Army. It's got 6 brigades. The entire 2nd Corps has 8. So it's almost a corps-on-corps engagement, but you've got 3 Union generals on the one side and one Confederate general facing them. Or sorry, maybe 9 brigades, maybe 9. Yeah, 8 or 9 brigades for the 2nd Corps. So it's almost an even fight. So now Valgoul's going to start getting pressed back into his main defense lines here, and so that's going to start happening pretty soon. Over here, Colston, for whatever reason, decided to get back on the road. 12th Corps is slowly inching their lead brigade up in kind of a scouting formation to try and press towards Bullock Spring. Rhodes' division is now formed in 2 battle lines and is moving towards Wilderness Tavern. 6th Corps' scouts have cleared it, so 6th Corps is moving into Wilderness Tavern. And 12th Corps' 2nd Division is marching down the road towards Wilderness Church, where they're going to, in column, meet the advancing rebels in battle line. So that's going to be interesting. So let's move to, what is this, 1445? Yeah, so let's move to 1500, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 1500, come on, there it is. So, over here, fight's developing. A.P. Hill's flank is getting pressed, but they're also pressing the Union flank, so it's starting to rotate here. Dispatchers are going out from General Geary towards the rest of 2nd Corps saying, I'm getting attacked by a massive force. And so now Valgoul is only facing basically a brigade or 2, while 4 Confederate brigades are facing his division. So, just a gunfight here in the woods that's already getting pretty bloody. Hill's taking a hit. Gibbon's taking a hit. So it's getting dicey and interesting. McGowan has managed to break through the line here and is going to force this line to retire. The Confederate artillery has ceased firing because of the worry of damaging their own men. And Longstreet actually has ridden over to take a reconnaissance of his own because A.P. Hill has so far not sent a single dispatch back to the Corps Command. Or he did send a dispatch, but to the Confederate Corps, to his actual Corps Commander, Jackson, who's over here. So Longstreet's trying to figure out the situation for himself. Let's move to... so Colston is assembling a new line. Pickett's moving forward. And the action here is getting intense here. Both sides taking hits. And now Rhodes is going to try and force his way to Wilderness Tavern. Of course, none of the Confederates actually expected to see Union troops here. This was like, they were deeply surprised by that, as they probably should have been, because the Union were supposed to be here 16 hours later than they actually ended up being. So, overachievers, I guess. I don't know. Let's move to 1530 and see what's going on there. So, fights are getting interesting. Hill's lead formations are starting to get broken, but so are Gibbon's. And so reinforcements are being rushed up. Hill has plenty, Gibbon not so much. And so Gibbon's going to eventually start being forced back. Though Hill, now's the perfect time to say this. The Confederates, for whatever reason, whenever the Union, even if the Confederates were winning a fight, they were taking so many more hits than the Union. It's just the way the dice fell. But for a fight where the Union would take 1,500 casualties, the Confederates would take 3,000. And I don't know why it happened this uniformly. It always did. And it's not like we weighted the dice to favor hits against Confederates. It just happened. So unlucky in that way for the Confederates. As you can see, these units have been reduced to state 3, so yeah, not going too well. Meanwhile, Valgoul's managed to entrench most of his line, or breastwork, actually. McGowan's brigade is continuing forward. They're trying to break through, but we'll see how that keeps going. And Archer's brigade is moving through here to try and get to here, but they have been forced back by Union artillery.
If I may.
Yes.
Next turn, pay close attention to that left flank on my line.
Mm-hmm. So there we have that. Meanwhile, 12th Corps has found Colston's division while they were entrenching, and because they're on white disruption from entrenching, yellow, regular units were able to break them, or actually rout them. So that was an interesting result. And so now these guys over here are hearing gunfire from these woods and thinking, what the heck? And Colston is hearing gunfire from those woods, and he's like, what the heck? So just everybody's getting spooked. Battle lines are forming over here with Rhodes. Geary's division is forming into a defensive position itself, and it's a bloody fight. Meanwhile, 6th Corps' scouts have been attracted to the gunfire and are like, what's going on? So now they see that there's an actual fight going here between 12th Corps and Rhodes' division. And so 12th Corps is now fully engaged with Confederate troops, spooking the Confederate commanders, but also the Union commanders are being a bit spooked as well. So let's see what happens. I'll just give you a cursor over here to see where the rest of the marching columns are at. You can see 11th Corps there, 3rd Corps coming up the road. So the end of the column is now out of the area. And at the same time, 1st Corps got bored. And so they took the pontoons they had, because they didn't have any engineers. They couldn't build bridges. So they used the pontoon boats to row across the river. And so now he's got nearly 2 brigades across the river. And Doubleday's, 1st Brigade, is moving up towards Mari's Heights and is going to try and take the trenches, because they saw that the Confederates had abandoned the trenches. So that's going to be interesting. And the Confederates are just now starting to see these guys moving about in the town below. So we'll see how that develops as well. So stuff happening all over the place. Let's move to 15. Actually, let's move to 1600. Because I haven't had anything to eat today, and I got to hurry up. So 1600. Let's see how this has changed. We'll start east and move west. So Doubleday's brigade has been met by the Floridians of Perry's brigade, led personally by General Longstreet, and so Doubleday and Longstreet are facing each other down here. Meanwhile, McLaw's division, having seen the Union troops in the town, has been ordered to advance. And so McLaw's is sending his brigades up And the Union artillery has seen this perfect target and start a massed barrage against the Confederates as they move. So you can see that they're starting to get disrupted and all sorts of artillery is going on. Like, on your average open Saturday, right, you have like maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen batteries of artillery on one side, right? Well, we've got 8, 12, 16, 17 batteries of we got 14 batteries of artillery just shooting at these guys. So that's a lot of firepower. Or as Phil Swift would like to say, that's a lot of damage. Or is that Phil Swift? I'm not sure if that's Phil Swift. But anyway, that's a lot of damage. So we'll see how that keeps going. Meanwhile, over here, A.P. Hill's division with its reinforcements are now beginning to press back Griffin's division. A.P. Hill, having heard of the commotion, is running back over here at the same time that Archer's brigade and McGowan's brigade slammed into this line, met the Irish brigade and the Union canister fire, and were routed. So he left this part of the line thinking, yeah, this is going great. Went over here, and where he thought it was going poorly, and now it's going great over here. And then he's going to get back over here, and it all went to crap. What happened, Even part of Archer's brigade ended up getting captured. So that was interesting. He actually managed to capture a block of Union troops himself. These guys, a movie is going to be made about these guys someday. I'll show you what happened to them on the second day of battle. Meanwhile, Colston is forming up his division against 1st Division, 12th Corps, which came down from here. And so we've got kind of a similar situation where the Union division is trying to deploy for battle, while the Confederate division is already deployed and is starting to advance. Rhodes' division is trying to envelop Geary's division, and it seems like it's going pretty well for him. The 6th Corps scouts have tried to help as best they can, though, they're not going to be too much. And so Rhodes' division is developing the flanks as well. These guys actually encountered this Confederate cavalry patrol and drove it back. And 6th Corps 2nd Division is forming into battle lines and is going to try and move this way to help eventually. Meanwhile, 11th Corps is moving up here to try and get around towards Orange Grove. And yeah, all sorts of different stuff going on there. Yeah, so that's pretty much what's going on. And then over in... No, we already covered that. Yeah, we moved from east to west. So that's what's going on there. Nothing too much. Nothing too fancy.
Carter, if I may.
Yes.
If I may, over by Bailey, while this is going on, this is the one time I'm starting to get nervous. I had actually pushed Buford's cavalry up as far as I thought they could go without literally running into the Confederates. Because at this point, I was getting more and more convinced that I was going to have a division come ramming up past like Ricker up through Bailey and take 2nd Corps in the flank. And that's why I like the troops here at John Hayden. I had specifically ordered I have to have something there because I really won't. I've gotten a report by now that they've already pushed across the river. They're exceeding their orders, and I want to get over there. But I can't because I don't want to leave Buford's cavalry behind. And I am, especially now that by this point I know that Buford's cavalry are the only intact cavalry I have. I don't want to leave them behind. And I don't know how this is developing. So I'm sure 2nd Corps figured it out at some point. But I actually had orders for Buford's cavalry that if this thing went straight to pieces, and since we're streaming, I'm avoiding all the proper Marine profanity for it, that Buford's cavalry would go across the bridges, I would go across the bridges, and then we would cut the bridges. Because the 2nd Corps diversionary plan was so important, I wasn't going to, 1, let it not work, and 2, let the Confederates get access to get across the river. So if it looked like 2nd Corps was about to get rolled up, then I was going to cut the bridges behind them. to prevent the army from having the Confederate army cross behind the whole army.
With your shield or on it.
A bit. I was present with them as long as possible, but I don't think they had any illusions that this was not their Thermopylae.
Yeah.
I
Well,
also want to make it a point that after that engagement, my sole purpose throughout this whole game afterwards was to find and destroy Hill's division if I ever encountered it again.
Yep. Oh man. Wow. Unfortunately, you didn't. But so yeah, let's move now to what is it? 1600. So let's go to 1630. And I would like to point out that all this time, poor Dave Pumphouse, as Colonel Sergeant, we got him his own map so that he could navigate.
My very own marching simulator. I love him.
We got him his very own map so he could march from Rapidan Station to the Wilderness map. And this is the turn where he showed up. Yay! With 1 brigade and 1 battery of artillery. He's finally on the main map. So an odyssey for him, to be certain. Meanwhile, all this fighting, smoke's come up, and both sides have decided to disengage. And this is what I mean, Marshall, when I say that tactically you were winning all of these engagements, right? AP Hill had driven back 2nd Corps, taking heavy losses, but had done it. Colston was driving back 1st Division of 12th Corps, and Rhodes was driving back 2nd Division of 12th Corps. And now you've got Early coming up to try and, do something good. And so, if you had been here yourself, right, when we were saying in the other thing, you got to show up. Like, if you had been here yourself, you would have seen this and been like, wait a minute, this is going pretty well, this isn't that bad. And so you could have actually made an effort. You could have actually feasibly done something in the Chancellorsville map. But of course, you were getting reports from these guys who were saying, oh my God, we're taking heavy casualties, right? And so, for all you knew, it was going terribly. But yeah, so just kind of interesting note. So over here, still fighting going on. AP Hill has broken off the engagement. 2nd Corps has retreated back into their defense line. And yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Meanwhile, McLaw's division charged into Fredericksburg under the fire of the guns. They made it to the Union line, took a volley of accurate musket fire, and the entire front line broke. And when the back line saw that, they fell back too. So the entire division now, having taken some hits and a lot of artillery fire, is falling back in great big disorder towards Mari's Heights. And so it was basically Pickett's charge, but a few months early, or a month early. So that's pretty much what happened there. Meanwhile, Doubleday has been forced back, and he is now retreating into the reverse face of the Confederate earthworks. But it's not going to last long with this Virginia Brigade, Garnett's Brigade, coming up here to flank him. And so he's going to have to give up this position eventually, too. That's pretty much what's happening. You can see that the forces, 3rd Corps has crossed the river. And you can see, I just want to give everyone an appreciation of just how much we had to, everybody, some folks, not everybody, some folks were like, oh, what the heck, this dispatch order is stupid. This dispatch rule is stupid. I want to give you a look. So 1, 2, 3, 4 dispatches here, 5 more here, dispatch here, dispatch there, dispatch here, 2 dispatches here. We've got some dispatch riders back over here and over here. We've got dispatch riders here and one at General Hooker, right? We got dispatch riders here, a bunch here, right? Just dispatches everywhere. We can't, with the amount of dispatches running around, I think the rule kind of actually was how, you can't write more than a few hundred words on a piece of paper while you're on horseback in 15 minutes and send it, right? So I think the dispatch rule was both accurate to like the limits of your ability to write stuff down and think and compose, and then also helped me not have to deal with 100 dispatches, only with like 25, at a time. So there were a couple of dispatches in the game where it was like Corps Commander writes a message to Hooker, CC all other Corps Commanders. And it's like, it's just like, oh my goodness. You can't exactly CC somebody on a dispatch because then you've got to write it again. So that takes time. So if you want to do that, you're going to have to spend all of that time writing out the first one and then writing out the one to the other commander and then the other one and then the other one. So that's my dispatch rule. I think it works. Some other folks have adopted similar ones. Anyhow, so that's how the fighting is going. Nothing too
And for the
much
record,
new. Yeah.
As the army commander with 7 corps, and I think I sent maybe 2 dispatches a turn.
Yeah, not many. So, yeah. It was you were one of the more restrained on the Union side, I will say. Though of course by force you have to you have to send a bunch of dispatches to answer people and that kind of thing. So you had to send a lot.
I think I responded with maybe like 4 words when I received
very well,
General Sedgwick's scholarly tome on the plan of operations for every square foot of the Wilderness Tavern area, which was incredibly detailed. But I felt like it was like the Japanese receiving the Midway battle plan by telegraph.
True. Oh man. Well, yeah. So that's that, and then let's move to what is it? 1630? Yeah, 1630. So let's move to 1700.
Hold on, let me talk for a second.
All right. You had something to say, James? Or
sorry.
No.
No.
Okay. No, you're all good. All right. So now we've actually gotten forces breaking off contact, and now 6th Corps is moving into a position to try and get around through the Hickman farm. And this is going to be an interesting fight with Rhodes' division against basically the entirety of 6th Corps. Meanwhile, Colston's division is forcing back the Union here, and 1st Division 12th Corps has begun ordering a withdrawal, and so now they're fighting a rearguard action. So Colston has managed to drive them off Bullock Spring. Meanwhile, AP Hill has fallen back, and now 2nd Corps is fitting itself into its defense lines. And so now Valgoul's division is reinforcing its works to trenches instead of just breastworks. Geary's division, basically now 12th Corps, after this moment, is not going to fight a battle for the rest of the day. They've been made rendered combat ineffective by the Confederate troops in their vigorous attacks. And so now Rhodes' division is going to face, instead of 2 corps, just 1 at a time. And so now we'll see how that action develops. And meanwhile, McLaw's division has been routed back to the supply trains and is trying to recuperate. Doubleday's division, somewhat beat up itself, is forming a defense line in Fredericksburg. Troops are crossing one by one to try and get into town, and the situation has pretty much stabilized. So let's move on to 1730. So, Rhodes' division is refusing its flanks, now getting reports that 6th Corps is enveloping it, or trying to anyway. And so they're falling back towards Wilderness Church. And so far, no fighting has actually occurred yet, just kind of pre-fight maneuvering. Colston, after that battle, got spooked, and so they're withdrawing. Early has been ordered to turn around. And so it's basically at this point where the Confederates made their decision, we're not going to fight for Chancellorsville. We're going to fight in Spotsylvania They hadn't decided Spotsylvania yet, but they had decided not to fight in Chancellorsville yet. So Rhodes was the tip of the spear and is now going to be the rear guard for the Confederate withdrawal. And he's going to do a really good job of that. I would like to say, Steel Partridge, like, you were probably the shining light on the Confederate side. Just because, you managed to drive back Geary's division and then fought a brilliant rear guard effort. So on the first day, I think you were probably the Confederate MVP. And then Union MVP. God, I don't know. There wasn't like too many super extraordinary actions that the Union did. I'd say probably Dave Pumphouse, or not Jan. Yeah, Dave Pumphouse was probably the Union MVP day one, organizing that cavalry fight, which gave him a bloody nose, but effectively eliminated the Confederate cavalry from consideration. So I'd say he was probably the MVP of day one. So you can see...
that makes me very happy to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it was a tough fight.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, and I would agree with that, because as soon as I got the official word that from Stoneman that he was sending what he could to Wilderness Tavern, and he was continuing to pursue the Confederates northwest with the rest of his command, I basically pounded the table and went, yes. Because at that moment I knew I had blinded Marshall. And I had some some maneuvering capability.
Mm-hmm.
Without having to worry about cavalry popping up and tearing up my supply lines. Because me and Kuntz had spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to try to protect our supplies.
Yeah.
Because that was the big thing, was we didn't have, none of these corps had more than about a day's worth of supply if they were actually fighting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, very interesting stuff there. You can see Rhodes' division is fighting the rear guard action and has actually managed to drive off most of 6th Corps' initial units with a very good burst of musket fire. He's formed an interior line here that he can retreat through if necessary. 6th Corps 1st Division is now forming up to move in for the attack. 3rd Corps is starting to move up to support 12th Corps, and the Confederate Jackson's Corps is now moving down the Orange Plank Road to get back towards Fredericksburg. A.P. Hill's division has retired almost to where their initial lines were, and has formed up like that. So, and now 2nd Corps is digging in along the line and preparing its Alamo positions, which, as a full position, never actually ended up being used, but was a good defensive spot anyway. So that's pretty much what's going on. Over in Fredericksburg, nothing new, just a few more troops across the river. Some artillery duels between the Union heavy guns and the Confederate field artillery, which the heavy guns were going to win every time because they could reach out and touch the Confederate artillery, and the Confederate artillery couldn't. So that was interesting. Yeah, pretty much that's what's going on. And at 1800, I'm not sure, did we do 1830, or was that... Yeah, we did do 1830. I think it was at 8 o'clock, so 2000 we actually called it a night and let both sides camp out. So Rhodes falling back, 6th Corps still trying to maneuver into position, and Rhodes is organizing the withdrawal very effectively. And there's 11th Corps now starting to gather up at Wilderness Tavern. All sorts of stuff going on. Oh, I got an ad from Nick. Yeah, all right. Thank you for playing, Nick. You can we're streaming this, so you can watch the rest of it on YouTube. But you played really well, so thanks for being a corps commander on the Confederate side. Not an easy task.
There was a pretty wholesome meeting in Wilderness Tavern with the German and leaders of the Union forces and the English-speaking ones.
Yes, that was pretty fun. There was a lot of... Oh, yeah, I should mention, for those of you who weren't aware, 11th Corps of the Union Army was primarily composed of German immigrants. Historically, it was commanded by a guy named Oliver O'Howard. He only took it over after it was offered to a man called Franz Siegel, who was a German by birth, and he was actually an expat to the United States who went here after the 1848 German revolutions, which he was a general in, so he fought in that. And then when the Civil War started, he became a general in the Union Army, and he turned down the command because he didn't think the Corps was ready for battle. There's a whole story about that. But Felix Geekington, who commanded the 11th Corps, I insisted that they all be actual German speakers and that they speak in German in all of their communications. So that was a fun thing where Hooker would get a message from Otto, who was one of, you were Carl Schurz, right, Otto?
Yep.
And so he'd get a message in like Danglish, right, where it's like half German, like it's like some kind of German English Creole that's mixed together, and so that was kind of interesting. So if the Confederates ever intercepted a message from 11th Corps, which they didn't, they wouldn't have been able to read it because it's in German. So, but that was kind of an interesting role play thing that we did. And you can see that even the division commanders in the Corps were all German. So Franz Siegel is the Corps commander. Oliver O'Howard was historically it, but again, I explained that. Felix wanted to be Franz Siegel since he was historically offered the position. And then Adolf von Steinwehr. So, your classic German names. And then over here, where the heck did he go? Where the heck is Carl Schurz? Well, I can't find him, but he's somewhere out there. He's in our hearts.
I think he's visiting the front line this time.
Carl Schurz. Yep, there he is.
It was a very shocking view seeing all those friendly Union forces running back after a bloody fight, and we weren't informed because we wanted to support them if there's a battle.
Yeah, true. Some of the retreating Union units from 6th Corps ran back out of the woods into Wilderness Tavern and were screaming about, Confederate attack, massive Confederate attack. And so 6th Corps was reacting to like, oh my God, we're getting... So for as much as the Confederates were scared, 6th Corps, the reason they deployed like that and then moved cautiously through here in battle line, basically allowing the Confederates to leave, was because they were just as spooked as the Confederates were. So, these woods are pretty gnarly when it comes to limiting what you actually know and what you think. So pretty easy to get spooked. Colonel Sargent moving all the way down here as a screening force. Some fun stuff there. Let's see the next report. I believe we got 1900. Chancellorsville 1900. Yep. So let's see how much has changed. Probably not much. The Confederates are just trying to withdraw. And that's pretty much what's going on. Roads, one by one, the brigades are leaving. 1st Division 3rd Corps is moving back up to Bullock Spring, where they've been told that they would expect Confederate resistance. And there were a bunch of bodies, a bunch of abandoned guns, muskets lying on the ground and all that, but no Confederates. So that was weird. Of course, what they didn't know was that just less than a mile south of them, through some heavy woods, was a Confederate marching column, and they never figured that out. Just the limits of the terrain here. Let me go to 2000. And that's where we end the day. The first day of battle. Which was not supposed to be the first day of battle. Oh no, is my TTS crashing? Oh, thank goodness it didn't. I was like, my 48 gigs of RAM surely could handle this. But, okay. So 1st Division 3rd Corps setting up a defensive line here, and the Confederates under Rhodes have managed their escape, and the Union have begun camping out for the night. So some fun stuff happening there. And that's the end of day 1. And with the day 1 pretty much summarized, what are y'all's thoughts? The players of the game, the observers, what do you guys think? Cricket.
I honestly wasn't. Oh, go ahead, Tech.
I was going to say I definitely kept watching, and I was expecting more of a reaction against Second Corps, but after that one attack by AP Hill got driven off, basically what Hancock kept screaming about, and Couch kept sending me messages as well, asking for permission to charge down the road and find the Confederates again. Given what I can see right now, that actually would have probably been able to cut off and destroy. Would have been able to cut off Jackson's corps on day one, and left at least Rhodes would have been just left out to dry. He would have had to just sit there and die in place
tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that was a mistake on my part of being too cautious when I should have let them be aggressive.
Yeah, I really wanted to just destroy Hill's division in full detail.
Glad managed to sneak in my historical footnote into the battle. That was fun. With the almost killing of General Lee. And for reference, I was told that most of your guns are out of range from the Confederate lines. You could tell that, but it's like, well, I've been ordered to try and keep their attention to Fredericksburg, and I have an abundance of artillery shells, so yeah.
Just shoot all the things.
Basically. So that was fun. To get to do that.
As a Union commander all the way in the west, near the Wilderness Tavern, I had pretty much no idea what was going on in the first day of the battle. I had heard that there was like some fighting near Fredericksburg, or like some cannons firing there, but I had otherwise no idea what was happening, and I think neither did our commander, Franz Siegel.
I was playing roads, and I was very scared about getting cut off the entire afternoon. I thought I was gone for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the big lesson of this whole battle is, like, you can get spooked, but the enemy is almost as likely just as spooked as you are, that engagement with 12th Corps, 1st Division, 12th Corps, 1st Division, and Colston's division, both sides were spooked and decided to break off the engagement at the same time. So that was an interesting little thing that happened. So, a little bit of self-confidence and maybe even a bluffing bluffing the enemy, right? By making this massive attack, you can make them think you're bigger than you actually are, especially when they can't actually see the extent of your force because of the massive amount of woods. So, neither side really played that to their advantage, but of course, historically, that was a big factor in why the Confederates actually managed to pull the win historically in the Battle of Chancellorsville. Was because they managed to really bluff their way through. In fact, I'm not gonna say that this is the right move necessarily, but basically what Lee did when he figured out that the majority of the Union Army was flanking around him, he actually found out that the Union Army was flanking around him only when the Union Army had reached kind of this area here. So a lot further than the Union actually managed to get in this battle. That's when he found out and sent units west. And what he did was he left a single division to guard Fredericksburg, and sent all the other 5 divisions all west. And so I think if the Confederates had full committed to a westward advance, this battle might have gone differently. Because the Confederates in this scenario had 8 divisions instead of 6. They had 2 extra ones. The other 2 divisions, being Pickett and Hood, weren't there historically. If they had sent Yeah, if they had sent 6 divisions west and left 2 to guard the Fredericksburg front, they could have done some really interesting stuff with the terrain here in the Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville wilderness area. But that's not how it played out. So it's just a counterfactual at this point, but an interesting possibility that could have occurred but didn't. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and do 29 April. So 0400 29 April. And I'm just going to go hour by hour. There's not too much to summarize here. The first day is really where most of the action happened. So, overnight, Union 1st Corps crossed the river, camped out in Fredericksburg. Most of the Confederates moved out early in the morning to move towards Spotsylvania Courthouse. They had decided to erect a new defensive line there. And so you can see most of the divisions have left. A couple have stayed behind, trying to get some extra rest, whatnot. The Union troops have been ordered to sleep till at least dawn, so they have no idea that the Confederates are on the move. So that's pretty much what's going on there. 29 April 0500. Let's see what's going on. So the Confederates keep moving. They're, force marching, so they're starting to get disrupted and whatnot. So they're getting close to the objective area, right? Pretty much everyone has moved out at this point, except for A.P. Hill. A.P. Hill's division is staying behind. He thinks he's a rear guard. Actually, he's just suicidal, but he doesn't know that. So we'll see how that develops. Meanwhile, 2nd Corps is starting to stand too, specifically 1st Division. And the rest of the army is slowly starting to wake up and start moving. Steinwehr has started moving from his positions way back in Orange Grove. And so things are starting to rustle around in the Union Army. And they think that the Confederate Army, overnight, has formed a defensive line. Oh, gosh, I need water. I'm starting to have voice cracks. But formed a defensive line something like this. They think that's the Confederate line. The actual Confederate line looks something more like this. If I can... Yeah, there it is. Okay, so over here, up, around, over like that, around, and up here, over, down this creek, keep going, then over, and that's where it ends. So that's what the Confederate line is going to look like later in the day. And so the Union plan is to press this, well, just attack, right? Just go. Press it in on all sides. But there's no Confederates to attack. And so they're going to find that out later on. Let's do 29 April 0600. Let's see how this starts developing. So the Confederates are starting to form up into their defensive positions. McLaw's in a reserve position here. Hood moving around to get over here. And basically, Longstreet's Corps is taking up this part of the line, and Jackson's Corps is taking up this part of the line. So that's how it's going to look. A.P. Hill has formed into his defensive positions and has actually managed to dig some breastworks. And he's basically acting as the rear guard for an army which doesn't exist anymore. It's down there. So we'll see how that happens. 1st Corps is starting to gingerly probe the Confederate lines, which they thought would have been occupied, but aren't. And so they're like, what the heck's going on? It's like that Ant-Man meme where he gets out there and it's like, what the hell happened here? They just see a bunch of abandoned equipment and, footsteps and all that stuff, but there's nobody to see. And so 1st Corps is half convinced that it's an ambush, but it isn't. They've just left. And so the Union is going to spend the entire morning basically just figuring out that the Confederates actually just bugged out to Spotsylvania. And so that's going to give the Confederates a lot of time to dig trenches, time which some of the Confederates, Anderson, didn't use to actually build trenches. They just built breastworks, which don't actually give that much protection against artillery fire. So let's keep going. So 0700. Let's see what happens. So 11th Corps is leading the march, and they basically deployed at Wilderness Church to expecting a Confederate attack or a Confederate defense line, saw nothing, kept going. Deployed at Chancellorsville, saw nothing, kept going. And so now they're like, what the heck is going on? And so they're just going to march east. 6th Corps is forming up behind them. 3rd Corps is getting ready themselves along with 12th Corps. There's a weird command arrangement where 1st Division 3rd Corps and 1st Division 12th Corps are now under 12th Corps command. Meanwhile, 2nd Division 12th Corps and 2nd Division 3rd Corps are under 12th Corps command. They've just swapped. So it's kind of interesting. The 1sts and the 2nds. So that's kind of fun. 2nd Corps chilling out on its defense line. AP Hill chilling out on his. 1st Corps still gingerly approaching, they're just like, what the heck is going on? Meanwhile, 5th Corps and... Yes.
Oh, if I may. So this is where this is a mistake on my part, and I was sitting back over at the Lacey house at Wilderness Tavern thinking, for some reason, that, because the cavalry is headed there, I was thinking that 6th Corps was headed to the south, towards Todd's Tavern. Because that was the battle, the original plan had put the 6th and 11th heading south to cut around and cut the Confederates off from the south and prevent them from getting to Spotsylvania Courthouse. So at this point, I had made a mistake and believed that this line of advance from Wilderness Church through Chancellorsville and all of that was actually a line of advance heading more towards the south.
Interesting. Yeah,
I thought that 3rd and 12th were sweeping down from the north, and that I had a 2-corps spearhead rolling along the southwest corridor. And that was a mistake on my part for not picking up on the actual organization.
Yeah, and so Anderson could have gotten smashed by 11th and 6th, but never happened. So let's keep going to, what is it now, 0700? So
while that loads, I think I'll speak up and explain that from my perspective, we were losing all of these little battles, and we were being encircled. It was necessary to reassert command and control over the army and to basically reorganize it. I was also concerned with Union numbers, and that's why we chose the line that we did. Falling back allowed us to kind of tighten up our defenses. We were able to deploy along a line that, as you look at it, you can see that there's this gully in front. The idea being that any infantry that charges across at us would have to run down into this gully and then climb uphill into breastworks and entrenchments, which would then give us a significant advantage. We'd probably get to fire a couple shots at them before they actually crossed and made contact. And the idea being that this is like a sunken road type position, and that would negate Union advantages in numbers. Of course, we'll talk about artillery when we get to it, but the idea being is we have to consolidate our position, and we have to take up defenses that will negate Union advantages in numbers and give me command and control back over the army, which I don't think I exerted or had on the first day, or at least if I didn't exercise it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so the Union, because of your move, were very profoundly confused by just like, where the heck are the Confederates? Meanwhile, AP Hill has started to move some of his troops south, but he's still got a bunch of his men up north and a bunch of his men down south. And so these guys, we actually did the math. if the Union just like straight up marched, I think they would have gotten caught. But I'm not sure exactly what happened. But we'll see what happens in a few moments here. I'm going to. AP Hill is basically where the action starts. I'll actually show you over here at Fredericksburg. 5th Corps is now marching across and forming up. They built some pontoons here, using the pontoons here to get across. And so they're preparing Grand Division A to move towards Spotsylvania from the east. So let's take a look at AP Hill. That's where the main action was. So 0800, now 0900. And Liam and I were poking AP Hill, basically telling him, bro, you don't need to, like, you need to just leave. Oh, I totally forgot. So, as the Confederates withdrew overnight, there was a Union... Remember that little regiment of 2nd Corps that got captured in the fight that I mentioned earlier that would have a movie made about it? Well, they were put in a little... They were put under guard here at the Embry Farm. And when Anderson's division, was it Anderson? I forget who, left that morning, they didn't leave a guard and they didn't order them to come with them. And so some of AP Hill's men were here, but then when they were ordered to withdraw, all of a sudden these men found themselves without a guard. Of course, they didn't have any guns. They couldn't fight. But what they did was they decided to leave. They escaped together. And so they actually made it to Fredericksburg, met with General Reynolds, told them the story of what happened the other day, and then were told to just keep on keeping on. And so now they're marching towards 2nd Corps. And if I'm not mistaken, where the heck are they? Were they still in Fredericksburg at this time? I'm not sure. There should be just a random Union block somewhere. I am confuzzled. Oh gosh, where'd it go? Disappeared. That's why the movie's made about them. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, it might pop up. I'll look for it in the next one. But yeah, so they ended up going all the way around and coming back and rejoining by the end of the day. So that was kind of a fun little thing that happened. Meanwhile, AP Hill is still up with a brigade up here. He sent forces to go sweep for the prisoners that escaped, which aren't there anymore. And he might end up himself and these 2 brigades getting captured. We'll see what happens. Let's go to... Is it 0900 right now? Yes, so 1000. And so because the Union turned south, they didn't actually end up cutting off AP Hill. But it was this turn that they started moving south, and as they moved south across this field, they actually encountered 1st Corps. And so this running gunfight is now going to develop where 1st Corps is attacking the northern half of AP Hill's line, while 11th Corps under Schurz is now running into the bottom reserve area of AP Hill's division. And so, what was funny, right, is that the Union thought they had encountered here the new Confederate front line, right? Something like this. But it was just AP Hill's division trying to bug out. And so they thought they were fighting, multiple divisions or a corps. But it was just AP Hill trying to get the heck out of Dodge. So we'll see how that develops. So let's go to...
That was my first action in 2 days of fighting.
Yeah. So...
Same here.
Yeah, all of these Union units that are getting engaged now, this is their first fight. Whereas AP Hill is... he's got bruises and scars, and he's just like, okay, come at me, after yesterday's fighting. So now the battle's starting to develop, And AP Hill is trying to deploy these guys, these brigade commanders are taking their own initiative to deploy and try and hold off the Union. And you can see they're just taking massive amounts of casualties. Most of these guys are now down to State 3. Like, oh my gosh. Meanwhile, AP Hill is starting to realize the pickle that he's gotten himself in. And so he's deployed a brigade in this railroad cut here to fend off 1st Corps while the rest of the division makes its way out. Meanwhile, 5th Corps has started marching from the east and is on an interception course to try and cut off AP Hill's column. So we'll see how this keeps developing. 11th Corps is trying to further develop the line, and it's starting to get interesting. Meanwhile, the rest of the Confederates, they're pretty much all set up. Buford has kind of reformed something of a division with Sergeant's Brigade. Dave Pumphouse has formed up something of a cavalry division. Sergeant's Brigade, which he brought from the Cavalry Corps, and then Hooker donated Buford's brigade to him. And so you've got 2 cavalry brigades and a battery of artillery, all under the command now of Brigadier General John Buford. And yes, if you look back, I did make a frickin' commander token for Sergeant. And yes, I did make a new commander token for Buford, specially for Dave Pumphouse. So
why, Carter? Why?
Because I was just too privileged. That's why.
Why do you do this to yourself?
I mean, it was just, I already had the template, so I just needed to change some text. That's all. But yeah, so I did keep updating his commander token, as yeah. And I did the same thing for an 11th Corps commander later on in the day. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Otovsky. That's what's pretty much going on. So it's 10:30, 29 April. Let's go to 1100. And let's see what's going on with AP Hill at 1100. How screwed is he?
Going on. As this is going on, I'm getting reports and I'm going, what? Y'all are where? You're in a fight with who? And this is when I'm realizing that, okay, 11th Corps is way not where I thought they were. The cavalry is starting to report stuff to me, and I'm going, guys, I need to scramble. Scramble. I need a corps. What corps do I have that's somewhere not other places? 3rd Corps. 3rd Corps, you go south, please, for the love of God. Because I was starting to have Jacksonian vibes at this point, that my entire army is strung out on one road, and Jackson's going to come crashing north and just wreck it.
Yeah, if the Confederates if Anderson and Hood had moved forward, this would have been an entirely different battle.
It would have been a historical engagement.
Yeah, would have been interesting. But alas, it didn't happen.
And you had me there going, oh, look, I'm tying down an entire corps with a couple of cavalry brigades. I was well chuffed. I was like, yay!
Yeah, so Dave Pumphouse probably had the most interesting game of anyone, really. But yeah, a lot of marching simulators. So, AP Hill's valiant defenders, all of this brigade, now all of Heath's brigade has been reduced to State 3. Heath's brigade is just evaporating. They're inflicting some pretty heavy casualties on Schertz's elite brigade as well. These Confederates down here, who's this? Lane's brigade. James Lane was the commander of these guys, and his brigade was actually known as the Unfortunates because they were the ones who actually ended up unintentionally in a friendly fire incident killing General Stonewall Jackson. But so they've driven back these guys. So the Unfortunates are more unfortunate not because of Jackson being dead because of them, but now they're unfortunate because they are in this really crappy situation. McGowan's brigade, the heroes of yesterday, are holding the sunken road actually not the sunken road, but this railroad cut. And so they've, all the fighting has kicked up a bunch of smoke. And so they're going to try and use this to bug out as well. AP Hill is now personally supervising this fight, trying to organize this rear guard action as these guys move on. And 5th Corps is coming in behind. Desert Fox he doesn't even know, but he's less than 2 miles away from Confederate forces trying desperately to escape. So it's a really interesting fight here. Let's actually go forward to what is it, 1100? So 1130, 29 April.
Yeah, I tried to fight, but they kept running away.
Yeah,
I think
Well, speaking of Jackson, we had a short pause during the night turn as the Confederates did have a small problem with some unfortunate player dropouts, and I began to make the joke that the Confederates had a Jackson, and he sank into the swamp. And then they got a second Jackson, and he sank into the swamp.
Oh yeah, that's
and
right.
We were starting because we'd had some players have real life issues and have to drop out, and it became somewhat comical about, okay, who is Jackson?
Yeah.
Jackson was like Schrodinger's corps commander. He was and wasn't there.
Yeah, it ended up being Rhodes. Steel Partridge ended up taking over the mantle of Jackson for the second day. So that was interesting.
I think the so-called Confederate unfortunates are actually firing on some Union troops that previously in the morning had fire on some friendly troops as well.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah, there was a little Union friendly fire incident that happened. But it was almost inconsequential. But yeah, there was a little Union friendly fire incident that did occur early in the morning of the second day. So 11th Corps is continuing to try and develop the position. 2nd Division, 11th Corps is up here. 1st Division's moving south. And they think they're engaging new Confederate forces, right? They're like, oh, look, we found the next part of the Confederate defensive line. No, it's these guys from Hill who went over here and then over and are still trying to escape that have now encountered more Union troops. And so they just keep encountering Hill and keep thinking they've encountered somebody new, but it's just Hill's division who has moved somewhere else that they've just ran into again. And Hill now going up to McGowan's brigade to try and get them to come down. They were going to follow this path too to try and avoid, that. But then they saw 5th Corps over here. And so they're like, oh God, what's going to happen? And so now they're marching overland through the Shelton and Baggett farms to try and cut through the middle. And Liam and I were like, I wonder who's going to make it first. Is it going to be McGowan or is it going to be, going to be 5th Corps? And so it's just some crazy fighting going on here. Lane, meanwhile, there's Union troops behind him. He's going to be ordered to evacuate soon enough. In fact, oh yes, it was this turn that unfortunately we had a commander death. Carl Schurz was in the front line commanding his men, being brave as all commanders should be, when we rolled a d20. And unfortunately, it came up on a 1. And so we rolled a d6, 50-50 odds, whether he gets killed or wounded. And he ended up being mortally wounded. And so he was able to write basically a sentence or two of last words to his commanding officer, Franz Siegel, who was there with him. And then he perished. And so then I made another custom token because Otto elected, instead of just being like a normal player and taking the L for a couple turns and then coming back as the senior brigade commander, he just decided to withdraw from the game entirely to make his loss even more felt, even more real. And so a new player came in as the new, and you'll see with this piece why I didn't make this guy the commander of 2nd Division. I think he was actually in charge of 2nd Division historically. But Alexander Schimmelpfennig was the guy who was in charge of the other division of 11th Corps, which got picked up, which now is which got folded into the rest of 11th Corps, and now he's the commander. So, and of course,
should have been a Confederate general. Then we would have had Schimmelpfennig's division.
Yeah. But, oh, God. Oh, jeez. Yeah, it would have been bad. But anyhow, so our first commander death And Hooker and Siegel both got kind of like dramatic reports of like, you see, you know, I'll go and freaking read it because it was kind of funny.
I basically wrote it up just in time.
Yeah, just in time to see him perish.
I was trying to get to the front since overnight we had actually had a player addition, and I had Major General Butterfield as my chief of staff. So suddenly I didn't have to sit stock still to write reports. I could send back a few small dispatches and let Butterfield handle converting those into larger dispatches to multiple units.
Yeah, so I found it. I found the little blurb I wrote for Siegel when Otto died. To your front, you see 3rd Brigade has ceased firing and is cheering. That means, you know, because Heath's Brigade. Dang it, Liam, it's rubbing off on me. Heath's Brigade had ran away, so that was all cool. And so it was actually as Otto won that he got hit by a stray ball. So you see 3rd Brigade is cheering. You see a group of soldiers carrying a man back toward the rear. You recognize the man as General Schurz, who is clearly badly wounded. The men bring him to you as they carry him rearward. On closer inspection, you see he is hit in the stomach and is bleeding profusely. He only has minutes to live. You salute him, and he mutters, and I'll find the quote that Otto wrote.
I can link it to you.
It's going to be in one of the co-locations, right? Siegel.
Yeah, it's Siegel HQ. I sent you the link there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so...
I like Felix's message before that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so you want to read it, Otto? You want to...
No, I'm dead.
Mein Hut, geroch, Gott.
It's
so
because before it he had like I got an update that my hat had been shot like a turn before, but my hat had a hole in it now.
Yeah.
So and I had written to the other commanders I need a new hat, so now as I'm dying I need a new coat.
There's nothing more demoralizing than getting your clothes torn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a commander death. So that was an interesting thing that happened. And then some cavalry probing here that didn't go to plan for the cavalry. So they're falling back. And yeah, so let's move on here to... We're at 11:30, so... Need 1,200. And we're coming in on the home stretch here. Only 4 more reports left. And then I'm going to go get something to eat. And I'll leave it to everyone else to discuss afterward. Everything and all that stuff. Okay, so Hill's division. These guys broke, but they held long enough for McGowan's brigade to get back through here. Archer's brigade turned around and faced 5th Corps to try and, buy some more time, which successfully they did. 11th Corps up here is still trying to figure out what's going on. 1st Corps is moving in. 1st Division, 11th Corps is still fighting, right? So there's an artillery duel here that the Confederates are winning. 6th Corps has encountered Confederate troops digging in here. All sorts of stuff is going on, but really, yeah. So McKay is now successfully, with heavy casualties, escaping. In fact, this is what remains of Heath's brigade. These 3 State 1 or State 3 blocks, so at the beginning of this game, right, Heath had a full brigade of 4 intact blocks. And now he has the equivalent of 1 block worth of troops. So Heath's brigade, I think, gets the dubious distinction of being the heaviest hit brigade of any unit in either army. So, yeah. And they fought well, too. So, it's not like they were cowards. They just took heavy losses. Let's go to 12:30. Let's finish this out here. We're nearly in the home stretch. So 12:30, 29 April. Come on.
And at this point, I'm putting reports together and getting the idea. It's basically the 3 Spider-Men all pointing at each other meme, as I'm looking at 3 different corps that shouldn't be anywhere near each other. And they're all within a mile.
Yeah.
These corps should be like opposite sides of the county. And I'm going, okay, wait, how did this happen? Where are we at? And where's the Confederate Army? And poor Peter has been getting like, this is the one time that anybody's gotten messages from me that are, hurry up and do something right now. For the love of God, make this happen right now. And that was Peter. Peter was getting those because I knew 12th Corps had been hurt the day before. So Peter is getting those messages from me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Third Corps, poor Third Corps is just like trying to find a way to get where they need to go. There was a whole traffic kerfuffle here with Second Corps and Third Corps 1st Division, just not able to do anything. But yeah, so that's pretty much how it's going. AP Hill now has escaped, and the Union are trying to sort out the traffic jam where basically the entire Union Army is getting shoved into this corner of the map. The entire Union Army minus 1 corps. So that's an interesting thing. Let's go to 1300, 29 April. Not much is going to change. Just people sorting themselves out. Little artillery duel starting, or it's going to start soon. Third Corps is arriving on the scene. They're kind of sorting themselves out here. Nothing too major. Meanwhile, the Confederate line is pretty much all entrenched over here, except for a couple spots. Anderson only has just started digging in as Third Corps is about to get here, so he's only going to complete some breastworks. Hood is still not dug in on his line. McLaws has finished digging his trenches in the reserve position, and AP Hill's division is recovering in the rear. Then we move to, let's go to 1400. And we are nearing the end here. You can see the Union artillery and Confederate artillery are dueling, and the Union artillery is getting the better of it. So that's interesting. Union Grand Battery here, five batteries of artillery shooting at the Confederate line here, pummeling the defenses. Some disruptions are getting taken. Union artillery moving up here, practically point-blank range. The Confederate artillery is about to start dueling with them as well. Over here, Third Corps has assembled its Grand Battery and is shooting at the artillery batteries of Anderson's division, which breastworks aren't going to protect you against cannonballs and shells. So it's just a straight-up brawl between the artillery. And the Union are winning that, though Anderson's artillery is doing an admirable job of disrupting the enemy. And yeah, so Third Corps is starting to arrive in the area. And so at this point, the opportunity for a Jackson-style push north has come and gone. And you can see these massive Union lines here, all that good stuff. Let's go to, 1400, 1430? Let's see, what do we have? 28 April. Yeah, so this is the last state of the game. This is the final state. And if you wanted to see kind of what the battlefield that we would have had today would have looked like, here's kind of a artist's impression, crime scene sketch of what the deployment kind of would have looked like in this sector where the main attack would have happened. forced off of the main line by Union artillery superiority and taking up what I'd argue is probably a better defensive line back here. So would have been interesting. But yeah. And that's pretty much the Battle of Chancellorsville.
And I was so ready to drive the final nail into the Confederate coffin if you hadn't pulled the plug on this.
Yeah.
Well, the entire deployment was intended to inflict maximum casualties. I don't think we had illusions that we would win the battle, but you would pay dearly at this point. We had kind of wised up to a few things, and this new line reflects the improved knowledge. And it would have been interesting to play it out, but it also would have just been a slog. And the outcome of the battle, I think, was inevitable. And it was really just a matter of how big or how small a victory would this be for the Union. And at the end of the day, I think we just figured let's have our Sunday. Although now we've burned up quite a bit of it, haven't we?
Yeah.
Still waiting for your unconditional surrender.
Yeah, not even close. So anyway, well, there you have it.
Yeah. So now with the entire saga described, I'm going to bring the stream to a close. But please, guys, feel free to hang out and talk amongst yourselves, your thoughts, opinions, just comparing notes and all that stuff. So thank you, everyone, for listening to me ramble on about the game for a couple hours.
Thank you, everyone.
But what about